I of course want, so it's great to see everyone on this webinar, and of course, we want to thank our colleagues at the New York City Charter School Center for helping to facilitate this very important presentation. I think this presentation has been going on for at least the past 8 or 9 years. And probably Jeff and Ellen have been part of every single one of those presentations, and I'll introduce them in a second. But at the State Education Department, we don't want data reporting to be a chore. Really, it's an important process that helps us at the state, one, ensure that your schools are getting the funds and services that you're entitled to. It was really brought into stark relief when the federal government issued the billions of dollars to New York in CARES and ARP ESSER money, that we used the data that you reported to help drive funding right to charter schools, millions of dollars per school in many cases. And not reporting your data can have serious accountability, funding, as well as public responsibility implications. A lot of the data that you report goes up on the SED data website at data.niced.gov. And so I can't reiterate strongly enough how important this is. And that's why we do this webinar every year. That's why I'm here. And that's why I've invited my 3 colleagues to join us. Many of you know Janet Klein, who's the data analyst in the charter school office, and I know a key resource for many of your schools. And we're joined by our 2 colleagues from the SED Office of Information and Reporting Services, Ellen Martin and Jeff Schaefer. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Janet, and she can lead us in the agenda. But of course, if you have any questions, big or small, please feel free to reach out to us. If we don't have the answer, we will be sure to point you in the right direction. And thank you for taking some time out of your very busy calendars to participate in the call today. So Janet, take it away.
Hi, everybody. Thank you, David. It is always a pleasure to be here. Like David said, we can't reiterate strongly enough the importance of data reporting in a timely manner and in an accurate manner. And the agenda for today is overall, Jeff and Ellen are going to take us through a number of the steps that you all need to take in order to achieve that goal. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to, who's going first?
I think I am, Janet.
Then let me please turn this over to Ellen Martin, who knows more about data collecting than I will ever know.
I'm not sure that's accurate, but anyway, first let me apologize. For some reason my camera doesn't seem to be working. But let's get started talking about our data collection, and I'm going to lead off talking about the BEDS collection, which is the Basic Education Data System. That's our legacy data system, and as you know, last Wednesday, the first Wednesday in the month of October, was BEDS Day. And we ask you to report your data to us on the BEDS forms as accurately as you can, reflecting what your situation was on BEDS Day. So let's move to the next slide, please. All right, we can jump again. Here's our agenda. So we're starting off here with the BEDS IMF collection, and IMF is Institutional Master File. Let's move ahead, please. All right, so this is a little bit of a rundown of all of the things that are going on here in IRS, and we are the data collection hub for the department. We're collecting data from all of our public school districts, approximately 700, over 4,000 public schools, almost 2,000 non-public schools now, and then our charter schools close to 350. We are collecting data on all of the students enrolled in public schools in our state, almost 3 million, as well as non-public school student enrollment. And Jeff is also in charge of the collection of our teacher data and professional staff data. And that is taking place through SIRS, the Student Information Repository System. And Jeff will have a lot to talk about a little bit later in the presentation for the staff portion. Okay, let's move to the next slide, please. The institutional master file. We can jump ahead. So here are the different categories of data that we collect on the institutional master file. Some of the questions include your type of school. We have a little bit of a problem with our versioning here on this particular slide, and the next bullet is magnet school status. We know that magnet schools do not apply to charter schools, so that particular question was dropped from our IMF collection this year. We're collecting information about alternative education programs that may be operating at your charter schools. We asked you to give us information on grades offered in your school. We also collect the free and reduced price lunch counts on beds. We know that some of you are also reporting your lunch counts in the Student Information Repository System in SIRS. However, it's important to note that the data that you report on the beds form is going to be the official source for public reporting of free and reduced price lunch for charter schools. Next, we're collecting information on learning standards and professional development, career plans for your students, any activities and involvements from local businesses, employers, and community groups. We collect the charter school applications and admissions. And if your school is receiving Title I funding, we also want to know what kind of program you're operating, whether it's school-wide or targeted assistance program. Then we get into some more details about Title I, including students served and staffing. We also ask that you report to us on your bilingual education programs, the activities of sub-grantees related to teaching and learning for limited English proficient or English language learners. We also collect some limited data on paraprofessional and non-professional staff at your charter schools. And then we wrap up with a new question this year, which is on technology. So let's move ahead to the next slide, please. As I said, last Wednesday was Beds Day, and our electronic application on the IDEX, the Information and Reporting Services Data Exchange. That's where you will go to submit your Beds IMF data electronically. Everything will be due on November 19th. That gives you about 6 weeks to complete the information. Here is the information where you can access the portal, and you will be logging on using your set username and password. We also have built over the last couple of years an extensive help center, including FAQs that are located at our Beds Vader support site, which is given, you've got the link right here. And finally, we have paper copies of the forms and instructions that can be downloaded from our IRS Beds website. And that can be helpful if you want to prepare your data ahead of time before you log into the portal and start submitting in the electronic environment. So let's move to the next slide, please. Here is our landing page for IRS, and explains all the ins and outs that you need to know about beds and the IMF. It's got a link for information if you need help with your SETA's username and password. Again, if you have questions regarding the online application, there's a link there to Beds Vader support. So it really has everything you need to get started collecting and reporting your beds data. Let's go to the next slide now. Here's an important piece of information that you'll find on that website that we just talked about. This is our, we call it a what's new memo. And every year we put together items that have changed, new items that have added to call your attention to changes within the form. So as you can see, item 2, that's what I talked about briefly before. The question about magnet school status has been removed from the charter school form because it does not apply. We have a new item that we added this year regarding community schools, and we'll talk about that in just a little bit. We did make some modifications to the alternative education program question. We hoped we made the question a little bit more direct and easy to answer by removing some ambiguities. We also made some modifications to the sub-grantees question, trying to update the instructions to help. And we have a new question for technology that's been added this year as well because of all the emphasis placed on remote learning and technology that's available to students. So that should be very helpful to the department to have this information moving forward. Let's go to the next slide, please. So here's the first question where we're asking you to tell us what's the primary focus of your school: a regular school, special ed school, vocational school, or an alt ed school. Next slide. So this is a little bit of a discussion about community schools. This is one of the new questions that you'll see this year on the form. And we've got some bulleted points here to explain what a community school is. It's a place and a partnership between school and community resources. It integrates academics, health, social services, youth, and community development. Community schools also lead to improved student outcomes and learning, stronger families, and healthier communities. Community schools also offer personalized curriculum that emphasizes real world learning and problem solving. And also we hope that these schools become centers of the community and are open to everyone all day long, every day. Let's move to the next slide now. So here's the question that we asked that you'll see regarding community schools. Is your school a community school? According to the description that we just saw, we want to know if your school is actively and intentionally working toward meeting practices that are articulated in the community schools description, and you'll find a more complete description in the instructions. We want to know if there's a New York State Department of Health approved school-based health center operating at your school, as well as a Department of Health approved dental program operating at the school's location. We also want to know if there's an Office of Mental Health approved school-based mental health clinic or a provider, a satellite provider operating at your school's location. Let's move to the next slide. Here's our question about alternative education programs. And again, we've made some improvements, we hope, to this question. We've gotten into a little bit more detail. If your school is offering an alternative education program to your students, we ask you to identify the factors that would encourage a student to enroll or be referred to that type of program, whether it's because of behavioral issues, substance abuse issues, suspensions, an at-risk student. There are also indications that accelerated, gifted, and talented students may be referred to these programs. And then we ask you to report the number of schools enrolled in the alt ed programs. Let's move ahead. Here's the question about grades offered. It says here that you can report students enrolled in grades that are not typically offered in your school. For instance, if you have nominal enrollment in kindergarten, you're primarily a grade 1 to 6 school. Here you can tell us that you do have enrollment in kindergarten, even if it's not typically a grade that you offer in your school. Let's move on. Here's the question about students that are receiving free and reduced price lunch. Again, this is a really important question. Data are publicly reported for each of the charter schools regarding the number of students that qualify for free or reduced price lunch. So we're asking you to tell us what type of provision your school has implemented, provision 2, CEP, or other. And then the important focus of this question here is if you are collecting the student eligibility information. So we ask then further down in this question that you report eligible students according to their grade level, K6, 7, 12, whether they are receiving a free school meal or a reduced school meal. Let's move ahead. The question about learning standards and professional development is pretty straightforward, and we ask that if you have staff that are devoted to that type of work, we want to know what proportion of their time is spent to be devoted to those professional development activities and learning standards. Next question, please. Career plans. We also ask you to report to us career plans based on the number of students completing career plans, total students, as well as students with disabilities, and whether these career plans are kept electronically, and whether they follow students from grade to grade, their career plans. We also ask to indicate the number of professional staff who are participating. I'm sorry, I'm having a little problem. It looks like my slide on the very bottom of my screen is cut off, so I might be missing something there, but let's move on to the next question. Business employer community involvement. We also ask you to report the types of activities and experiences that students in your school can participate in. And we ask that you report their grade level along with how many of those students in each grade are students with disabilities that are participating. And this question is focusing on last year's schoolwork. It's for 1920 students who participated in the 1920 school year. So we're looking back for your answers to this question. We're looking back to the prior school year. All right, we're ready to move forward. And questions about participating staff, participating employers, what their functions were. Did they serve on curriculum development committees, shared decision-making? Did they provide student internships? So that's a little bit more detail for this particular question. Next slide, please. This is about the charter school applications and number of students admitted. Let's move to the next slide, please. Title I funding. Again, we're asking you in the first part of this question to look back at the prior school year and tell us your status for the 1920 school year. If you're a new school this year, there's also a box for you to check to let us know that. We ask you to tell us what kind of program you implemented in your school, whether it was school-wide or targeted assistance, and what your expectation is for funding in this current, wait a minute, I think this may be a versioning problem too. All right, so we would be asking for the information in the prior school year, which was 2021, and we'll be asking what your expectations are for Title I funding in this current school year, which would be 21-22. I apologize for the mix-up in this slide. We'll try to get that corrected when we share the presentation. Let's move ahead, please. Again, additional information about programs that are operated and the number of students served, support service areas, health, guidance, other support services. And we also ask you to tell us, report the staff FTE for staff, that are participating in the targeted assistance programs, as well as the paraprofessionals. And this would be current year. Again, we'll get that straightened out for you. There are a couple of questions here about the bilingual education program that you're operating in your school. And there's a transitional bilingual education program. The next slide will show us the question for the one-way and the two-way bilingual. If we can move on in the deck. There we go, the one-way dual language bilingual. And the next slide will show us the question for the two-way dual language bilingual education program. You'll tell us what year your program began. You'll report the students according to the languages and their grade level. The activities of subgrantees related to teaching and learning for L students. We ask you to tell us a little bit about the type of activities that you're offering. And then the very bottom, you'll see there is a selection for other. Any activities that weren't captured in the previous array. If you select other, we'll ask you to give us a little bit more information down below on what that activity really was. Moving on, we are getting to the end of our IMF presentation. This is a question about the paraprofessional and non-professional staff that you're employing at your charter school. We ask for a full-time head count, a part-time head count, as well as an FTE for the part-time staff. Let's move ahead, and here's our new question this year for technology. Does your school have sufficient technology? Do you have reliable technology? Sufficient network infrastructure to meet your current needs? Broadband capacity and network infrastructure to meet your future needs? So we're trying to get a little bit of a handle on the technology question, which, as you know, has become even more important last year and this year as well. Let's move ahead. A little bit more detail on some of these questions about devices for student use and whether those devices are for in-school use only, or can they be used outside of school on an as-needed basis. We ask for information about mobile devices as well as desktop devices. Let's move to the next slide. We also would like to know about the devices and internet access for your teachers. And you'll see those questions there on our screen. So that is the conclusion of the IMF BEDS form. If you have any questions, I don't know if we want to take questions later at the end. I think it's time we're going to move ahead because we have so much to cover for the staff presentation, and that will be Jeff.
Okay, I'm ready to take over. Thank you, Ellen. Can everybody hear me okay? Janet? Sounds okay? Okay, good. Apologies, I turned off my camera. I had some buffering going on here, so I don't want to take any chances. All right, so I'm going to provide a brief overview of the NYSID staff and course collections, and then talk about some other things related to reporting data, reviewing and checking your data, who has access to do this information, and so on. So if we could move ahead, please. Okay, reporting staff data to SIRS. All course data is reported now to the Office of Information and Reporting using SIRS, or it's called Level 2 or the data warehouse. Course and teacher data is required to be reported by both state and federal law and regulations. So We have to collect this information and then we pass it on to the authorities. Next, please. So this screenshot provides an overview of the various staff course collection templates. This says 2021, but this is also relevant to 21, 22. We have to update a few of these slides here. The ones that you can see in orange shaded boxes are the ones that would be applicable to charter schools. And it shows over to the right what we end up in the end doing with this information, whether it's state reporting, federal reporting, and so on, as well as where it ends up in the public domain. A lot of our information ends up as part of our state required school report cards that you can see on our website at data.niced.gov. So since we have so many slides, I'm not going to spend a lot of time here as I'm going to be going through these individually. So if we could jump ahead, please. So I'll probably spend the most time talking about the staff snapshot template or the table that you're going to be reporting, because it is the primary driver for all other staff data and your teacher certification data, as well as the courses that your teachers are providing instruction in. This is the data set that you want to have prepared at the beginning of the school year, and you want to be moving it as early as possible. It collects information about all your teachers as well as your non-teaching professionals. These would be your certified staff, your guidance counselors, social workers, administrators, and so on. This is information that's been collected historically. It was part of the BEDS forms that you submitted for those of you that have been around a few years. And then it was also collected in the teacher portal, which we no longer use. So all of this, the course and staff data is moved directly into SERS now. And I've got examples at the bottom on some of these slides of where the information ends up in the public domain. So we'll talk a little bit more about it as we move forward, but teacher turnover is one of those things that's impacted by how accurately you report your staff data. Next, please. So as I said earlier, it's a prerequisite for some of the other tables that you're going to be reporting. The staff assignment template collects the non-teaching, that's those certified individuals that I talked about, as well as staff snapshot being required to report your course instructor assignments, staff attendance data. Tenure and staff eval is unlikely to be reported by charter schools since they don't have approved staff evaluation plans. But all the other ones require a staff snapshot record for that individual person before that you can report them in another place. Can we move forward, please? Staff assignment, as I talked about, this is where you would load these the records for these individuals. The principal codes are the codes you would use for charter school leaders. There is a listing of all the staff assignment codes and that you would be reporting if you look in the SERS manual. So there's probably a couple hundred of these, from department chairs to psychologists, social workers, and so on. Next, please. Staff attendance. This is a much easier collection than the student attendance collection in the fact that you're only reporting cumulative days absent. You're not reporting individual days. You're not reporting present days. You're just counting up the number of days that an individual was absent. This is probably not one of the, this would be moved to the data warehouse later on in the school year as you've accumulated some of this information. It does show up in the public domain on data.niced.gov. We converted to a rate. So you want to be accurate with this. can we move ahead, please? Course instructor assignment. So this is a little bit bigger of a collection than the staff assignment or the staff snapshot. That's HR related information that you should have, I would hope, at your fingertips, and you can report more easily. There's a little bit more to reporting the course data. It is a requirement. We have to submit it to the federal government. It does drive some of the reports in the public domain. You're essentially going to take all your courses, you're going to map them to our state course code catalog if you haven't already adopted the state courses as your own local courses. And then you're going to report those. You're going to report the date that the course started. You're going to put the teachers on there as the teacher of record who's assigned to those courses. You're going to create course and section codes for all of these. And there's also a place in this template to identify SWD as well as ENL teachers. So we'll get into a little bit more detail moving ahead to the next slide. So this is the other side of the course domain. In one table, you're going to report all those courses and you're going to identify the teachers that are part of those courses. In the student class entry exit, you're going to be reporting the same courses, same course and section number, and then you're going to be reporting all the students that are in those courses. So that way we're able to take the two tables, join them together based on the course and section. We know who the teachers are and we know who the students are. The student class entry exit has an indicator on there for dual credit courses. So if you've got students that are taking a college course or getting dual credit for the course that they're taking, you can flag that record for that student. Just a reminder on that one that you should be using a unique course and section code. For example, you don't want to, if you have 100 students taking a math course, you don't want to use the same section number for all those students, because when we try to take an average class size, it's certainly going to skew the information. So try to view it like you would an actual classroom, something that would be reasonable for a teacher to have that number of students at a time. And that holds true whether it's being done remotely or whether it's being done in person. So that would be an independent roster for that teacher. The teacher may have 4 sections of math with 25 students in each one, but it would be unlikely that they would have one section of 100 students. Next, please. All right, so now I'll give a brief overview of the course to certification matching process, essentially what we're required to do with this information about the courses and the teachers. We perform a certification match because we're required to do so, and we're required to report out the information. Next slide, please. So how the system works, there's essentially 3 main components to it. We have information now from our teacher certification office. They share that information with us. You share the course data information with us. And then we have a crosswalk that was developed by the department that puts those 2 pieces together and identifies whether or not a teacher has the appropriate certification for the course that you reported. And you can see here in each one of these buckets, the items that are contained. Next, please. So how we share this information with you, we provided a crosswalk starting a couple years ago. Prior to that, there was no crosswalk that was shared out publicly with LEAs, so they weren't sure ahead of time what their certification reports were going to look like. We made some significant changes in that direction, and I'll walk you through some of that now. there is a primary crosswalk that we've developed. It's essentially a spreadsheet that has close to 50,000 rows of data, providing every possible permutation for each certification and course combination. So for an example here, you see there's an Intro to Agriculture and Natural Resources course. So someone would say, well, what are the appropriate credentials someone should have to be teaching that course in terms of their certifications? So you can see to the right of that course, these are all the certifications that are issued by New York State, and any one of these would be considered appropriate to be teaching that course. Now, we know that charter schools have a certain number and percentage of exemptions that they're allowed to have, meaning they can have uncertified teachers, right? So we're still performing the same straight up match here. Based on that, it will be noted on our public website that charter schools by law are allowed to teach outside of the regular regulations. Next slide, please. In addition to that primary crosswalk, which lists all 2,000 courses and all the certifications that are mapped to those, there is a special ed crosswalk. We use this to determine if a special ed teacher has the appropriate certification for the course. And I don't know why. It must have to do with the screen size or something, but some of the text is cut off at the bottom. But again, we're going to share this out with you so that you can see it, but I can explain what's going on here. Generally, the special ed teachers have to have certification at the grade level. There are some older certifications that would work with any grade. They're all grade certifications, but by and large, you need to look at the grade level. So someone with a 712 can't teach someone in third grade. The department has eased up some of that during the COVID period and allowing, in fact, someone with the lower certifications to teach up. But by and large, the way that we do this is we're mapping the grade level certification to the grade level that the student is teaching. So the way you should report special ed teachers is you should flag them on the course instructor assignment with a special ed indicator. We'll talk a little bit more as we move forward. Okay, there's also a bilingual way to identify those people on course instructor assignment. And there's a home language course field on there. And in that field, when you send up the record, however you're sending it up, if you have a student information management system, or if you're using a template that was provided by your regional information center, if you have somebody that's bilingual certified, you would identify the language where they're providing instruction on that template. And it would be a language other than English. And these are the certifications. If someone has one of these certifications, they're acting in that role. You want to identify them as such. If you don't, then they're automatically coming up as not being certified. Next slide, please. Same goes for ESL, ENL teachers. If they have one of these certifications, you're going to identify them by setting it up, sending up the record as a Y or yes in your role, on your template, in your student management system, however you're sending the data up to us. Next slide. Okay, so this essentially shows how the staff templates and the course templates are interrelated. It all begins with that staff snapshot record in the beginning there. The sooner you do that in the school year, everything else will fall into place. You send up that template, it will allow you then to be able to report your course data. It will allow you to be able to review all the certifications that your staff holds. If you are someone, or maybe you didn't have to do this, but your HR folks did, they wanted to check the certifications of their teachers, they probably were authorized to go into the Teach system and look them up one at a time. What we've done here is built a process so that if you load your staff snapshot data, we've created a report for you that you can go into, assuming you have the entitlements to this level 2 report, the CSRS report. You can go in and you can pull it down and you can see all the certifications your teachers hold, their effective dates, any that expired. This allows you to keep track of their certifications. That's an important reason to load your staff snapshot data. In addition, loading that and then loading your course data, your course instructor data, will allow you to see what the certification match looks like for your teachers. It used to be a process that was done at the end of every school year. Didn't give people much time to clean things up. Now, as soon as you load your staff snapshot, your course instructor data, in the fall, you should be loading these things, you're able to see on a weekly basis what your certification match looks like, which teachers are deemed certified for their courses, which teachers are not. Again, it's not going to show you the exemptions that your teachers have from the law, but it's going to at least give you a picture of who's certified for the course, who isn't, and maybe identify if you forgot to use some of the indicators for those teachers. Okay, next slide, please. So I think I talked a little bit about some of these things, the two components of the course data, the CIA, which is your teachers and courses, and the SKI, which is your students in those courses, using unique sections. Don't send up duplicate records of the same students in the same course. If you're breaking out reading and writing, I'm not sure this was done so much by charter schools because it was more related to staff evaluation data. You know, just send one. If you've got students in an ELA course for grade 3, don't report 2 records of the same student. Report your librarians, reading teachers as well. Use those indicators on the template to identify roles of special ed ENL teachers. And again, start preparing it in the fall. Next, please. Okay, so now I'll talk briefly about some of the various collection and reporting systems. We may have mentioned some of them earlier, but for those of you that are new to this role, I think it's certainly worth amplifying the information. So our office has a number of collection systems. The department has some other ones as well that we don't use in information and reporting services, but these are some of the ones that we do rely on. As Ellen talked about, the BEDS online system, that's been around for quite some time. It's changed a little bit in terms of where we're now collecting the data. There is the IRS portal, which allows us to exchange information. We post files for you to pull down. In some cases, LEAs have moved files in the other direction. We'll be talking a little bit more about the portal as we move forward. For any of these systems, I think it's worth noting that you're not, unless you're a CEO, that would be a superintendent of a school district or BOCES or a charter school leader, you're not automatically entitled to see this information. You need to have someone provide you with those entitlements. And that generally would be the CEO. So the charter leader, if you're going to be acting in the capacity as a data person, CIO, and so forth, at the beginning of the year, you want to make sure that you have access to this information so that you can conduct the business that you need to. The IRS IDEX allows us to, again, we have a number of forms on there, from BEDS forms to there's higher education forms on there, and sometimes just specialized forms that we only collect for a year or two. If someone has that entitlement to be able to review information in the IRS portal, they should have access to the IDEX as well. And then there's CSRS, the level 2 data warehouse. You would need to have access to that. That's going to be important if you're serving in this capacity, to be able to review your CSRS data, look at your Cognos reports for what we've talked about, as well as all the other reports that are going to be out there on student enrollment, and you want to review student demographics and some of the new collections we've talked about, assessment information. That's all part of the student information repository. Next slide, please. This is just a screenshot essentially of the IRS portal, and it's showing this particular charter school and all the files that they have sitting out there for a particular year. So to be able to see this information, you need to have access to the portal. When we post something out to the portal, if we take a file and send it out to you, in a lot of cases, it's just for your review. In some cases, you may need to do something with that particular file. When it's sent out, an email is automatically generated, and it's sent to the CIO, the Chief Information Officer in your LEA, that is listed in our CEDREF database. Okay, so our CEDREF institution database collects information about administrators, people working within your charter school, whether it's the charter leader or the CIO. There's other titles in there that some of the other offices in the department use. It's the master database for our institution data. If you're acting as the CIO and you're not listed as that person in CEDREF, you're not going to get these notifications. The same will be true as if we send an email out and we pull all the email addresses out of the database. If you're not listed in there, you're not going to get the information, and it's probably going to have to come to you from some other path that won't be very efficient. Can we go to the next slide, please? So the NYSED business portal, not to be confused with the IRS portal. The IRS portal you could kind of view as an application or a sub portal under the business portal, where the IRS portal is used by our office, IRS. The NYSED business portal is used by other offices within the department as well that have their own applications. So you can see here on the left, my applications. These are the ones that I am entitled to. If you're the CEO or a charter leader, you're probably going to see a number of other ones in there for which I don't have to use at all. But that charter leader would need to entitle people within the charter school that are going to be handling data to see these various types of applications. Next slide, please. The IDEX we talked about, it's pretty straightforward. Once you have the entitlement to it and you log into the portal, you can see it there. You would just click on that. Next, please. And you're gonna look for the form that's sitting out there. So you've got a search box there, and you can search for a particular form. There's a BEDS form there, and then you would click on that. Next, please. And essentially you would do the work that you need to on that form. So now I'll move over to CSRS, and we'll talk a little bit about the repository. So these are the templates that we use to collect information. It's part of NYSED purchases the eScholar package. That's the company eScholar. They develop the templates. They use these in other states as well. And we use these to collect information. So any school district, any BOCES, any charter school, if they're sending information to SERS, they have to use the same template or format to send this information. If you're working with one of your RICs and you don't have a student management system that's storing this information in this manner for you, your RIC is probably providing a template for you, formatted so that it can be moved up to the data warehouse. In the case of New York City, it's probably being provided by Eastern Suffolk BOCES for you. It's going to go to New York City DOE. It's going to make its way up to the level 2 data warehouse. And there's more information on here, and there's a link a little further on where you can look at all the templates. Next, please. So this is the SERS templates sit on this page. This is a page that we use for vendors primarily that are packaging and putting and developing student management and HR related systems so that they can report information to us. The eScholar templates down there are essentially, it's a spreadsheet of 25 tabs, and you click on that and it will show you each of the required fields, and it will give you a little bit of information about the reporting requirements for those data elements. There's also the course catalog there. That would be the catalog that you would use to report your courses to us. You would have to report courses to us using these state course codes. Even if you're storing and offering courses and you call them something different locally, at the end, you need to map them to these to be able to report it to us. Next, please. And you should be familiar with the SERS manual. If you're brand new, then you need to get familiar with the SERS manual. It is a comprehensive and not an easy document. It's grown over the years as new collections have been required. But it will provide you with some context about why and how we're collecting some of this information, and also it will give you some information that you're going to need about how to prepare it and how to report it to us. It also has codes in there that would be valid codes for each of the templates that you're going to have to be familiar with. And you can find that on the website that we were just looking at. Next slide, please. So in terms of reviewing and verifying your data, I think, as David said, it is a process. If for those that wait until a week or two before the deadline, you're probably going to have some inaccuracies and you may not be pleased with the results when it's reported out publicly. So the things that you can do early in the school year, you should start to work on. You know, your staff snapshot data should be done as soon as possible. Your course instructor assignment should be done as soon as possible. You should be preparing your enrollment data as soon as possible. If you do those things, your other things down the road, your programs and your assessment information and all of that later in the school year will be easy to do, easier if you have a valid enrollment record or you have a valid staff record. Keep track of your due dates. There is a time, oh, nope, that was fine. Next slide, please. There is a listing here of all the due dates for all of the information reported to SERS. This is in the SERS manual as well. If it's updated, we repost it with a new date on it, but this will allow you to at least get started and know when information is required. Next slide, please. A little bit more on verifying information. Know early in the school year where you're going to review the information. You need to know, is it going to be reported in SERS or is it information that's coming through in the IDEX? So I need to ensure that I have access. I'm entitled to use the IRS portal and the IDEX. where the beds online would be. Do I have the said ref information updated at the beginning of the year so that I'm in the loop? Okay, and I see something from New York City here in the chat. Enrollment records for New York City charters come from the ATS, so it's even more important to keep ATS up to date. All right, great, thank you. So now let's talk about what's new for the upcoming the school year that we're in now, 2021-22. Next, please. So the primary new collection is student digital access or student digital resources. So this has been in the works, I think, for a number of years around the country. Some other states have already started collecting it. The department started collecting it 2 or 3 years ago. It wasn't collected from IRS, from our office. It was collected from our program office, just part of the curriculum office now. And it was a survey that you submitted via the NYSED portal, and they asked for aggregate counts. So it wasn't student level, it was aggregate information. So we decided it was more efficient and based on the needs of the department that we were going to move it into SERS and collect it that way. So it is a new template now. It's pretty straightforward in terms of it, one, not interacting with other templates. So the only contingency there is you need to have an enrolled student there to be able to report this information. So you have to have an enrollment record to begin with. It's not a complex template either. There's only a few fields on it. Probably the most time will be taken in terms of how you proceed to collect the information from parents. Are you going to use an online form? I mean, it can be a bubble sheet. It can, how you go about collecting the information is a local decision. As long as you collect all the pieces, it can't be a partial survey. Every one of the 8 or 9 questions here needs to be addressed. And it needs to be reported using the particular codes. We have the questions right here on the template, and I believe the codes are on the next slide, if we can move forward. So you've got a question here, school provided device indicator. So that's basically saying, you know, and if we went back to the question, is your school providing a device to the student? That's a yes, no. Then there's the type of device. The next question would be, is that a desktop? Is it a laptop? Is it a Chromebook? You have to choose from one of these codes and descriptions. That's what you would end up submitting to us. And again, I'm sure your regional information center has already set something up so that you'll be able to begin conducting this survey in the fall and trying to get the information. I know some schools are doing it on parent days or they're handing out packets. However you go about it, you just need to ensure that, you know, you've got a student's name on it and probably a student ID so that you can, you know, you're able to transfer the information to SERS when it's time to report it. It asks some other information about residents, access to internet in the residence. Does the student have access to internet in the residence and things of that nature? So there will probably be a public reporting of this on data.nysed.gov. It's also to be used in the event funds become available, whether government or private funds. You would want to be in a position if you have a need to, you know, garner some of those funds. So it's probably a good idea to try to get the survey done as soon as possible and get the information reported. The initial pull of the data, a data extract preliminary data will be pulled by the department in December to look at the information and see what it looks like. School districts, BOCES charter schools will have until the close of the school year in August to clean up data. So data can be updated. So if you do a survey in the fall and the school did not provide any devices to students, so you sent up a no for everyone, and then 2 months later, you gave everyone a Chromebook, then you would be able to update that and change that information in CSRS. Next slide, please. The other new piece of information here, and it's not new in terms of us having it on a template or collecting it. It is because you've probably been providing student address information as part of the NICES student match anyway, but we've decided to move the information up to level 2 in CSRS. So just a couple of things to be aware of, and I didn't see a lot of this when looking at the NICES data. Statewide, maybe there were only 3,000 or 4,000 records where someone used a post box as a student's address. This is a physical address residence where someone's living, so we're not going to allow that. If you try to send this information up, your record will fail. Now, we're not going to turn on a hard error in level 0 and level 2 for the next couple of months probably. But for now, you should be looking at any error reports in level 0. And if you see things with a post office box or missing student address, then you should try to rectify that as soon as possible. There may be some instances, we're hoping it's not a lot, but there may be some where, whether it is a court order or some legal issue, a student may be homeless, there may be an issue where you just cannot ascertain the student's residence right away. So we're allowing an unknown to be used in that field for the first student address. And then if you get that information later, you can update it. But you can't leave it blank. There's information about these things in the CSRS manual. Next, please. Somebody has a question here. If the device is provided in the building, does that count? There's questions like that on the beds form, but I believe the question here is going to ask about them issuing a device to a student. That's something the student would be able to take home to. Okay, student daily attendance. So this is not new, but it has had some changes. It's been of increasing importance over the last couple years because of COVID. The department has had to work with other state agencies, the Department of Health, Office of Temporary Disability. It does have a sharing component with these agencies. It could have to do with contact tracing. It could have to do with pandemic benefits. So it's important to get this as accurate and complete as possible. So the past year you reported if a student was present, not just absent. We've refined that a little, and you also reported if a student was tardy. We've refined that as well. So there's going to be a present in, or they present in person, or present out, or they tardy in, tardy out. It's to help identify where the student was when they were learning. It also uses, we also collect whether or not the student learned remotely, in person, or possibly both on a given day. So there's a lot of pieces to this. I would suggest that you read about it in the SIRS manual. There's a page that talks about some of this information. A lot of it is here. You would be reporting suspensions as well. There's also reports that have been developed at level 0, level 2, where if you reported enrollment for a student and there was no attendance data, it's going to flag that. It's a missing attendance report. So those should help you too, but at least have a process in place to be able to identify kids who are present and learn and home or not in school, or if they are present and they are in school, and so on. Next slide, please. Okay, these are the codes that you're going to be reported. So these would be the only codes that would be accepted in SIRS. It can't be anything but these codes. Next slide. And then there's a few other miscellaneous changes as we move forward. Staff tenure probably isn't going to be something that the charter schools are going to be reporting. Program data, if anybody is familiar with the program seal of biliteracy, the department now created a seal of civic readiness for to be reported for students with proficiency and civic awareness and so on. That's going to be handled at the local level. That's the code, the program code that you would use. There's also a career pathway of civic readiness corresponding to that. There also is a new L exit reason code for students, L eligibility exit using the 2021 NICETEL score that went into place. And also you should be aware that there is new, there's a new gender code. It's a non-binary code. As you can see there, the code is going to be the same for students as well as staff. So if you have students or staff that do not consider the current gender codes valid, either male or female, this is the other option that's currently available. So you should be aware of that. There's a couple of links below that provide some additional information about that. Can we go to the next slide too? So this is again about how you're going to get at your information, how you're going to be entitled to see certain information, and it's all handled through SEDAS. That's the department's application that manages who gets to see which collections. So there is information. There's an extensive user guide. As I said at the beginning, probably the most important thing is to find out what you're responsible for. Is it going to be online data? If you're going to be acting in a data capacity, you probably need to be able to get at information within the IRSP, the IRS portal. So you can handle the IDEX collection, or maybe the Beds Online collection, certainly the L2RPT, or that's part of SIRS, the level 2 collection. So you need to be entitled to those things. You need to contact your CEO if you're not entitled to those applications. And somebody will entitle you to do that. Whether or not you're going to be the person that actually handles creating, updating, and disabling counts, or you're just entitled to be as a user, that's going to depend on your role. And those things will be explained when you go to the SEDAS user guide. Can we jump ahead, please? This is just another screenshot of the IRSP where you can pull down files. I think there was an earlier one as well. And here, this is probably most important here, because so much of the data is collected through SIRS, that you become familiar with all your SIRS reports that you're going to be able to see within that Cognos environment, whether they're the staff reports, the course reports, the program data, enrollment data, all of that information. They're all separate reports. So this is just an example of a staff snapshot report. If you logged in as your school, you pulled this down. Once you loaded all your teachers with this information, you could download an Excel file and review it and ensure that it's accurate. If not, then you could make changes from there. But this is refreshed on a daily basis. So even though your RIC may not be pushing your information on a daily basis, some of it is refreshed. It's refreshed at the data warehouse on a daily basis, but at least view everything on a weekly refresh, as some of the reports are, and try to get in the habit. Not that you need to review everything every week unless significant changes were made, but have a process so that you're not waiting until the end of the reporting deadline to do that review. In addition to this one, as I mentioned earlier, as soon as you load this one, Staff Snapshot, you'll also have access to that staff certification report. So you can pull that down and review all the certifications for all your teachers in the teacher certification database at NYSED. So that's another reason to get this done early on. Can we move forward? Okay, just some of the links to things that I've already discussed in the presentation, and some more links right there. And data support, I know a number of people, if you're dealing with having trouble figuring out how to load your data, submit your data, things of that nature, about the templates, and you would probably be working with your regional information center, New York City. I know a lot of you reach out to Eastern Suffolk BOCES for that charter support. But things about questions pertaining to the policies of the data, or questions about SIRS, the SIRS manual, something like that, you can search for information that we've put in data support, and you can also, it will provide you with an option if you need help to create a ticket to send us with the questions so that we can respond. We don't get a lot from charter schools, so you must be reaching out to your regional information centers for that assistance. Can we jump to the next slide? And again, here's some of the contact information that you can use as you move through the process. And I think the next slide just opens it up for questions.
Okay, so thank you, Jeff, so much, and Ellen, for that wonderful description and presentation of the SIRS process, IMF process. We do have a couple of questions, but I do want to point out before we get into questions, what Erin Cochran from the DOE Charter Office has pointed out in the chat. In regards to charter schools in New York City, these templates are submitted to SED through Eastern Suffolk BOCES. So just remember that the data from there then flows up to the state. So as well as ATS needs to be up to date, as Erin mentioned, in order to let the data flow up to the state for all these templates. I'm going to actually, if Erin wants to mention anything more or chat in regards to how New York City schools flow the information through Eastern Suffolk BOCES, she can feel free to unmute and go ahead.
Thanks so much, Alex. Just exactly what I popped in the chat. It's really important to keep your ATS up to date on a weekly basis, on a daily basis, going in and checking your stat screen, because that information, whatever is in ATS is the source of record, and that's what's going to be provided to Eastern Suffolk BOCES to start the population for some of these templates for you so that you don't have to start from scratch. And it's also what is going to be reported to the state. Many times when charter schools come to us and they say that something looks off in their level 2, which is great because they're checking it, 9.5 times out of 10, we can point to the issue related to some action that was or was not taken correctly in ATS. Yeah, so if folks have any questions about monitoring ATS, please let us know. I can pop our help desk website in the chat.
Thank you, Erin. That was really helpful. And Jeff and Ellen, thank you so much for the huge amount of time that you put into this and your time today. It is very much appreciated. Erin, in the chat, a number of people are concerned about what looks like things get reported to ATS, things get reported through SIRS. It kind of looks like enrollment as it arrives at SED is some sort of hybrid between ATS and SIRS. And apparently they had some problems last year because DOE didn't open until a certain date and their calendars didn't match what they were reporting. Could you provide some clarification on that?
I think if folks are in that situation, it would be helpful if they could submit a ticket. I can't really speak to it without any specific examples. But I do see in the chat, there's a question about ATS attendance not flowing up to the state. The reason for that is because ATS attendance does not capture the remote and in-person modalities that NYSED is now mandating be collected with that. And so if charter schools are submitting ATS attendance, that is not a complete attendance record. And so you will still need to go to Eastern Suffolk BOCES to provide that remote or in-person modality.
Thank you so much. That's really helpful. So when it comes to enrollment, are schools, New York City schools, reporting their calendar, their day calendar through the SIRS system or through ATS? Or both?
I'm sorry, what was the question?
The day calendar.
Yes, I believe that is submitted through Eastern Suffolk BOCES, but I will confirm.
Okay. And then when it comes to the student light template, is that ATS or are they submitting that also through the SIRS system?
So nothing to my knowledge is being submitted directly through SIRS. Information is either submitted through ATS, thank you, Tracy, or submitted through Eastern Suffolk BOCES. And then whatever information we have in ATS will be populated in the templates hosted by Eastern Suffolk BOCES. So there may be templates that are mostly complete and just need additional information. And that's true across the board. So I would suggest that every school be really familiar with all of these templates. Eastern Suffolk BOCES has a great list of all of the templates and which data points are needed for each, so that you are aware of which data is coming from ATS and which data is coming from other, that you would be entering directly into the templates and possibly even just extracting from your own student information system.
Yes, if I could just jump in real quick. We do have Tracy Davy from Eastern Suffolk BOCES on, if she just wants to clarify some of these templates and what's submitted through them.
Hi, everyone. I just put our website in the chat to help you find us. And there's a bunch of information on there to help you. We actually have a annotated version of the state's timeline for the school year, where I point out when we suggest you start reporting each template individually. In a nutshell, we're collecting everything regarding your staff and your students, the courses that they take, and staff and student attendance. We also help with a few program facts along the way. And we are actually the only way right now to be able to report Regents exemptions. Level 0 is actually live today, but only for the prerequisite templates. You can report staff snapshot and date calendar, location marking period and courses. Student data, we're still building out the rest of it. That will be available. You'll be able to see enrollments and whatnot next week and to do all reporting, at that point. Thank you for the shout out and chance to chat.
Tracy, so glad that you could join us today. You always bring a lot to the table. It is much appreciated.
Yes.
You're all great collaborators too. Yeah.
Yes, Tracy and Erin are definitely our liaisons, our go-to people when it comes to reporting to the state. So that will kind of wrap up our session. I know that we do have a couple questions. I don't know if you want to hang on a little longer, Janet, Jeff, Ellen. There's like 4 more minutes left for some of the questions. There was a question about the data, the new student digital information, and like when is it due? Also, if the device is provided in the school building, does that count for schools that are doing 100% in person? So I don't know if you want to take those questions real quickly, Jeff.
Sure, I'll tackle a couple of them. I think I answered a couple already. We're going to be
Yes.
doing a December poll for the student digital equity. That's preliminary data. It should be on the timeline. The end of the year data will follow the rest of the SERS collection, which is generally the 3rd week in August. Everything should be up to date and complete by then. Following up, somebody said, where can the technology survey information requirement be located? So the screenshot that I shared showed you the template with the questions that you should be using to survey parents. If you go to one of those links I had and it showed it's the vendor page and it showed eScholar templates, and you open that template up, that will provide you with the listing with the screenshot that I showed you in the questions. So those are essentially the questions that you need to be asking parents. And someone did ask about, let's see, let me scroll back here for a minute too. About school, the school devices too. I think I did address that there are some BEDS questions related to school devices, but the question on the template is more getting to, are you issuing a student a device to take home and use outside of their school day? So do they have Chromebooks that they're issued, like I believe New York City did, to take home, not just some computer to use while they're in school? So that's how you would answer that question. I don't know if Ellen wants to add anything to what I said or correct me.
No, I think Jeff's got the information there. So the BEDS question is asking about school provided devices to be used primarily in school, and in certain instances, can they be used at home? The SERS question gets into a little bit more depth, that devices can be provided by parents or others, not just the school.
Perfect. So with that, it is 2:29. I want to be respectful of everyone's time. We will definitely gather up all the questions and shoot them out with the answers in the FAQ, as well as the slides and the recording. Thank you to Janet, Jeff, and Ellen, and David from SED for walking us through this process, in addition to Erin handling questions in the chat and Tracy offering her insight from BOCES as well. It's definitely a collaborative effort to get all this data in. So we appreciate you all, and we hope you enjoy the rest of your afternoon. Take care.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.